Good morning, everyone. I continue to talk on these text steps. Opening the hand of thought. I have been talking on this text, I think, more than 10 years. Because I talk paragraph by paragraph. So today I'd like to talk about one paragraph on page 129, if we have this book. Second paragraph of 129. This is a very short paragraph. We often say things like, I know you very well. But this hardly means that I know everything about you. It only means that I know the aspect of you that appears before me. For me, you are nothing but the you that is within my world, within the universal self as my world. So here Okumura has been talking about the perception and also the evaluation of certain things, or this entire world is personal. I show this this is made by Okumura, and everything is personal. Refer to this first one. We are each different person, individual. But in the second illustration, he said, this means language. We use language, and using language, we kind of create the world in which we share understanding. And our world become separated. This is something we want to, there's something we want to chase after, such as fame or wealth or social status, and something we want to escape, that is like poverty or unhappiness. So within this world created by language, we have certain system of value, and we start to chase after something we want, and we want to escape from something we don't like. Or our world become a kind of a conflict between individual or group of people which has the shared kind of idea. And in this group, this is absolutely right, but in that group, their idea is absolutely right, and they cannot live together. So they have a conflict. Not only the work, but even within our daily lives, we have some difference between my idea, even though we share the same idea, or we use the same words. What I mean about this concept, and what that another person meant by using the same word might be different. That is how our life becomes full of conflict. But next, Okumura said that is only happening within our mind. And this is the our zazen. This means when we are sitting within our mind, within our brain, the same thing is happening still, but we place our entire being on the ground of, in Uchiyama-Roshi's expression, raw reality before being cooked by our thinking. That is the meaning of our Zazen practice. And letting go of thought is actually we let go of this idea, world of idea using words, away, put away. Even we let go, it's still here. So things are coming and going, and yet, at least during sitting in the Zendo, we make determination to take any action based on this thinking. That is the way we put our entire being on the ground of interconnectedness. And finally, through practicing this way, we finally, me, my, and the entire world are one. That is basically what Uchiyama-Roshi wants to say. And these two are kind of two sides of our life. One is others not me, others are not me. This is the expression Dogen quote in the Tenzo Kyokun. I have to live my life by myself. No one can live for me. No one can eat for me. Someone can eat my food, but it's not my eating. So my stomach doesn't feel it. And here he is talking about magnanimous mind. The big mind is a mind in which me and the entire world are one. But in order to reach that conclusion, he's talking about each one of us has different life experiences and different feelings and different idea and different way of thinking. And this is the part of it when this is very natural things we often hear, I know you very well. But Uchiyama-Roshi is saying, but this hardly means that I know everything about you. Even parents and children, we don't really completely understand the person. Even when we live together, 7 days a week, still, the world I'm living and seeing, and the world other person is living and seeing and feeling are different. And we cannot even tell how different it is. And this one analogy of this is Dogen and Yogacara uses the water and 4 different kind of beings. Fish or dragon sees the water as a dwelling place or house or palace, and human beings see water as water, and it is said heavenly beings see water as a jeweled necklace, and the hungry ghosts see water as a pus or the blood. So each, depending upon their karma, each living being sees and experiences the same thing different ways. And Dogen even a question whether we say one water is seen 4 ways by 4 different beings, but how can we know there is one thing that can be seen different ways? Because our way of understanding about water is already seen by us, being by human beings. So Dogen questioned, probably there was 4 different perceptions, and there's no way we can make sure there's one thing before those 4 perceptions are created. This is a very basic teaching of Yogacara. And when we talk about people, we also, even if I don't know so much about that person, somehow I have a perception, and by seeing some aspect of that person, we create a kind of image of this person, and almost make a definition of what this person is, and make judgment whether this person is good or bad, or trustworthy or not, or kind or not kind. And once we establish certain definition or image of that person, when each time I saw that person, I meet with that person with this idea, and this idea made up in our mind kind of control the way I see the person and evaluate the person's actions. That is how our picture of the world and idea about each and everything is made according to Yogacara teachings. So each person has seen even the same person different ways. And another problem is, once we establish such a definition or image, we cling to it. And as I always said, Uchang Roshi's saying, writing or talking is very understandable and colloquial. So he doesn't use many Buddhist technical terms. Even in this paragraph, he doesn't use any traditional Buddhist term. So we think what he's talking about is very normal and understandable, and I think I understand. And in my experience, that is a kind of a danger to me. So what I have been doing is to translate Uchang Roshi's colloquial expression into traditional Buddhist idea. And in order to understand this paragraph, I think, again, Yogacara, part of Yogacara, very important part of Yogacara teaching, might be helpful. That is, I think, Doju mentioned a few weeks ago about 3 natures. There's a teaching in Yogacara called 3 Sansho. San is 3 and Sho is nature. So it said there are 3 different natures. And those 3 different natures appear in the Yogacara text. First one is Hen, Ge, Sho, Shu, Sho. Second is etakisho. Third is en jo jisho. Henge shoshu sho and etakisho and en jo jitsu sho. In English translation, these are first one is translated as a falsely imagined nature. There's no falsely, but maybe falsely imagined is translation of K. Hen is overall or universal or the entirely, and the K literally means calculation or measurement. So that is when we, in this case, meet with some person, we measure this person using some yardstick already in here. And in this translation, falsely imagined nature, Chinese expression shoshu is not translated. Shoshu is attached or clinging to. So we measure or fathom what this is and evaluate this thing. And once something is established here, we attach that idea. And we cannot be free from the self-made idea about that person or that thing. So this is the way we see things and making a concept, and we are limited by the concept we made in our mind. And second is etaki. A is to depend or rely on. Ta is other, and ki is arise or caused. So this is the reality of interdependent origination. Things are arising and perishing depending upon the causes and conditions. That means there's no such fixed identity within people or within things. They are simply a collection of different elements within cause and conditions. There's no such fixed entity within anything. So this is the same as emptiness, interconnectedness, no self, and impermanent. And enjo, en is perfect, and jo is become or created or completed. Jitsu is true or genuine, and sho is nature. So this is the three way of viewing things. And this second one is the reality as it is, but somehow we cannot see the reality as it is as simply a collection of elements, and we create certain idea or concept, in this case about a person, and we create the image of that person or that things, and we are controlled by that image. And according to that Yogacara text, this third one, Enjo Jisho, in one English translation, this is translated as a perfected nature. Maybe this is a translation from Sanskrit, not from Chinese. That's why there's something different. But this means the way to see things as they are. That means there's a way to see the reality of interdependent origination as they are. That means being free from the first one. In one Yogacara text about these three natures, this is verses by Baspanzu. Said, because of whatever imagination is created in our mind, from Chinese, I think this is more like a fabrication in our mind, using their, when our six sense organs encounter with the object of six sense organs. There are six consciousness arise. This is 18 element or tatsu. By receiving the stimulation from the object, something happened in our mind. That is what this first nature means. So, because of whatever imagination, whatever made in our mind, such and such a thing is imaged. So, the image is already here, and when we see the new things, depending upon the image here, we make another image of this thing. And this imaged nature does not exist. So this is not really existing. This is a fabrication, this is a delusion or illusion created in our mind. That is a concept made up in our mind. And about the second, Baspanzu says, the nature that is dependent on others, the nature that is dependent on others is discrimination born of conditions. And about the third one, he says, the perfected nature is the eternal privation. Privation means separation or aparting from this thing, from our concept. This is a kind of a very important point of Yogacara teaching. But to explain these three natures, there is an analogy used in the text. In a very important text in Yogacara school. This is the summary of the great vehicle, or Shodaijoron, written by actually Baspando's brother, Asanga. Well, I don't have much time to talk about these two people. They are real brothers. And Asanga first became Mahayana Buddhist. And Baspanzu was a very great scholar monk in the so-called sectarian Buddhism. And he wrote almost the encyclopedia of Abhidharma called Abhidharma Kosha. After he wrote such a great writing, he became the Mahayana Buddhist and wrote about this teaching of consciousness only. So this one is by elder brother Asanga, in order to explain the relation between these three natures. he used an analogy that is, let me read what Asanga is writing. He said, it is just as in the dark, a rope, a piece of rope, appeared to be a snake. Rope looks somehow to the person looks like a snake, and this is a poisonous snake. So sometimes we see a simple piece of rope as a poisonous snake, and we become afraid, fear of this thing. That is what he's writing. It is just as in the dark, a rope might appear to be a snake, while in fact that snake is an illusion and does not exist in the rope. So even when we see the rope as a snake, snake doesn't really exist. And he said, everything we create in our mind is like a snake, made up when we see a rope. So rope is an example of dependent origination, and snake is how we see that thing. Thus, when people have clearly examined the objective rope, their previous confused awareness or perception of a snake is seen to be without objective foundation. So we understand what is made up in our mind is not a reality, but this is an illusion, and falls away while only the rope is known to be present. So we see the rope, only rope is there, and snake is illusion. Not only that, he says, yet this knowledge of the rope, when subtly analyzed, that makes too much sense to me. This is more like analyze more in detail, take a much closer look at. He's saying even the rope doesn't really exist. When subtly analyzed, is also, how can we pronounce, chimerical?
Chimerical.
C-H-I-M-R-M-E-R, chimerical, that is a fabrication in our mind, is also fabrication and without objective foundation. To see this as a rope is also a fabrication, he says, because it is characterized by material form, odor or smell, or taste and contact, none of which, contact between body and that thing, none of which have any stable and objective foundation. When the mind encounters these objects, its knowledge of the rope is also negated. That means when, in this writing, Asanga didn't pick up analogy of the third one, but in Japanese Yogacara teachings, they use hemp. Hemp is a material used for making a rope. So snake is pure illusion. Only thing there is rope. But rope is also simply a collection of different elements. And basically there is only a hemp collection of hemp becomes a certain shape and for certain usage, certain use. And we call it a rope, but even the rope is fabrication in our mind. Actually, the only thing that is hemp. This is like in the case of water and four beings, we see one water is seen different ways. So the concept or images or perceptions made by those four different living beings are first one, fabrication. But we think there is water actually, and this one thing, this water is seen from by different beings, and within their mind they create certain image or definition or concept about what this is. But what Asanga is saying is water is also just a collection of H2O, 2H and 1O. So water doesn't really exist. That is the same kind of things. And now we know even water can be separated into 2H and 1O using the electricity. So water doesn't really exist. These are collection of two kinds of atoms. And now today we know atoms can be split, and then it becomes simply the energy. So even the water is our perspective, our perceptions. So actually there's no fixed thing. Even the atoms are not a fixed thing. It's a collection of different elements. So then, we understand all these are simply the way we see things and use our ability to think to understand what they are. And the way we understand what they are is influenced or controlled by our selfishness, self-centeredness. I always want to say, what is this good for? And what can I get from that thing? So, in a worldly sense, we are always think, is this good for me? What can I get from that thing? That is how our world is created within our mind. So we, in a sense, even the positive thing or negative things, these are created by our mind. That is very basic teaching of consciousness only or mind only. And what Yogacara teaching wanted to say by using such a or creating such a theory is by seeing those are all creation of consciousness, we can be free from clinging. Clinging to what we fabricate in our mind, or even we are clinging as a so-called Mahayana Buddhist teaching, everything is connected with everything. If we think this is only truth and attach ourselves to that, then that might be another problem. That is like when we clinging idea of nothing is real or everything is empty, then we may conclude, therefore, nothing is important. Then that attitude creates another problems. So, in a sense, this teaching means this is the reality. And yet we cannot see the reality we see with our self-centeredness, or not only personal self-centeredness, but we entire human world is created by human beings, and something is shared by all human beings, but that is still a fabrication. Like human beings are center of the universe. Human beings is most important within the nature. All other, animals or living beings are the materials or resource I can use or we can use. Within human world, that idea, human egocentricity, is not completely negated. We don't think that is an illusion, but according to this teaching, that is still fabrication. So, this perfected way of being things is see interdependence as interdependence. There's nothing added. So our usual way of life is kind of first and second are together. We see interconnectedness and create our self-centered idea about that world. But the third one is seeing interdependence as interdependence. So this is also really existing dependent on independent from interconnectedness. Seeing interconnectedness as it is this genuine way of seeing things. So there's nothing gained. This is a kind of explanation of very basic structure of Buddha's teaching. That is, the very kind of a basic structure of Buddhist teaching, in my understanding, shows in the four Dharma seals. Four Dharma seals are everything is suffering, issai kaiku. And second is everything is impermanent. And third is everything is non-substantial or no self. And fourth is nirvana. Nirvana is quiescence. This is the first one is when we do things based on this illusion created in our mind, our life becomes suffering. Even though we see interconnectedness, somehow we cannot see this as it is, so we create some self-centered image, and we live based on that image, our life becomes suffering. But when we see interdependence, emptiness, and oneness and equalness of all beings, then our life become nirvana. So first, Dharma seal is truth of suffering, and cause of suffering according to Yogacara is because we live based on our illusion. Even though it's illusion, we don't think it's illusion. We think it's more real than reality. That is a problem. But nirvana is not some particular place or stage of mind, but seeing interdependence as it is. So even when we become free from illusion, we don't gain anything. We just become normal. So that is what Dogenzen here, Uchamura is trying to say. Our Zazen, this kind of a transformation from the life in which everything is suffering to the life, nothing to be, nothing to chase after or escape from. So our life become very peaceful and calm. In the case of Buddha, this transformation from the samsara, this is the basis of our life within samsara, and this is nirvana. And what Buddha taught is how samsara can be transformed into nirvana. And in the case of Buddha, this transformation was very complete and perfect. But in our case, even though we are at bodhicitta and receive bodhisattva precept and take a bodhisattva vow and try to live being free from self-delusion, still self-delusion is always, produced because our mind, according to Yogacara, the 8 layers of our consciousness is still creating this thing. Even Buddhist concept is fabrication. And we cannot even study Buddha Dharma without fabrication. Buddhist teaching is also fabrication. Therefore, we need to be free from even that Buddhist concept. And in the case of our practice, Dogenzen Uchamura is writing here, and that is based on Dogen's teaching, is we cannot transform ourselves completely. And yet when we sit and let go of the self-centered thinking, that is so-called karma, production of our experiences, and that create this fabrication. By letting go of them, we, as I said, we place our entire being on the ground of interconnectedness. But in our mind, still, the very self-centered idea is creating. So we have to let go, and returning to sitting is become free from first nature. And the third perfect nature is not something we can attain or we can see as object. because object of our thinking is already concept. So what we do in our Zazen practice is in Dogen's expression actualize or genjo that reality by letting go of our fabrication and just sitting on the ground of interconnectedness. Well, that is what when I read Uchamoro's writing, I trying to understand what he's talking about in terms of traditional Buddhist teachings. And this is my understanding of what Uchamoro is writing here. This is what I have to say this morning. Any question or comments? Please.
You mentioned that when, I think it's in Genjo Koan, right, where Dogen talks about fish seeing water as a palace.
Yeah.
Does he mention also hungry ghosts seeing it as pus in the text? Okay, so...
he also said the same thing in Sansuikyo, or Mountains and Waters Sutra.
Mm-hmm. So my question then was, you had said that Dogen doesn't really quote much Yogacara material because of the Tendai tradition being
as far as I know, that is the only Yogacara teaching Dogen quote.
Mm-hmm. And that it comes from, is it from Vasubandhu, I think? In
no, Asanga's this text.
Okay, yeah, okay. So that's the only instance that you're aware of?
As far as I know, maybe there are some. So I think Uchamoro used this kind of idea probably because of influence from Sawakiroshi, because Sawakiroshi studied Yogacara teaching at the monastery named Horyuji. So Sawakiroshi and Uchamoroshi's teaching becomes a little unique within Dogen's tradition because of the influence of Yogacara. So Dogen Zenji used only that analogy, but he didn't say, that is very important point.
Mm-hmm. And a second question was the images, the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Is that from the commentary on Tenso Kyokun, or is it
almost same?
Uh-huh.
But in another book, he wrote around the same time with the commentary on Tenso Kyokun. He made this what they call illustrations. Mm-hmm. And he called this is a structure of the self.
Mm.
Okay. Okay, anything else? Please?
I have more of a commentary. I'm a little confused and perplexed about the move from the three natures from 2 to 3, perfect nature and dependent emptiness. And the reason why I'm confused is perfect nature has nothing added to it. We see emptiness as emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
But the move between the two is a fundamental shift. And it's a fundamental shift of our understanding You can call it by whatever you want to call it. But there is a difference between the two. I mean, if I'm stuck solely in emptiness, you get into this idea of moral turpitude, nothing matters, nihilism, all the negative aspects. But when you see emptiness as emptiness with nothing added, there is a shift in there to where you don't see it as that anymore. It turns it into a joy. And, you know, that's something I've been sitting with lately, and why we do this, why we see this as a joy, etc. But in general, my comment is, I understand how you're saying this, and I can see it in my practice, but at the same time, logically, I don't see it as nothing added. There is something there, akin to the ability of saying, we have that ability to put our mind in neutral, not follow our thoughts. There's something there that's added. It's not added on, but is a fundamental shift.
I think the difference is there's no clinging or attachment even to the emptiness or idea of emptiness or interdependent origination. And in Yogacara, they say there are three kind of wisdom. First one is called Fumbetsu-chi, or discriminative wisdom. We make discrimination, and we judge. I like this. I hate that. This is important, not important. And second is non-discriminative wisdom or basic wisdom, that is prajna. That's the wisdom which sees emptiness, no self, impermanence, and so on, interdependent origination. That is the second kind of wisdom called prajna. And they said there's third kind of wisdom, and that is called gotoku Fumbetsu-chi. Fumbetsu is discrimination, and chi is wisdom, and gotoku means later attained. Later attained or later attained means discriminating wisdom attained after seeing the emptiness. So seeing emptiness means no attachment, no clinging, and yet we can see the difference. And we need, according to their teaching, we need this discriminative wisdom to understand what's the problem when we meet with other people, as a bodhisattva or Buddha, when we try to help that person in trouble. To do so, to help others, Buddhas or bodhisattva needs to understand what the problem of this person. Each person's problem or suffering are caused by different elements. So we need to understand what is the cause of this particular person's particular problems. And Buddha said he was like a doctor, great doctor, so he gave a medicine that can work to that particular person with certain particular problems. So I think that is the nirvana. Within nirvana, we need this discriminating wisdom without clinging or attachment. That makes us free from our own clinging. But we can see how other people, how the person in front of us suffer. So nirvana is not just being free from our self-clinging, but how can we help or how can we offer something to the person in front of us? So nirvana is not just quiet condition without chasing after things. But nirvana, within nirvana, we need to work for others to pacify, not only the self, but other beings. Well, is this the answer to your question? I think that is the difference between second and third. Okay, thank you.
The discriminating wisdom, if I'm understanding you right, isn't that a function of number one, and along with the other two?
Yeah, this is first discriminating wisdom.
All right, so it does come from one, but you're
Second is non-discriminative wisdom, and the third is gotoku, later attained in discriminating wisdom.
Yeah, I understand. So it would be something of a mistake to assume that 3 is the negation of 1.
Yeah. I forget about Yogacara teachings, so I cannot say for sure in the case of Yogacara teaching. But in the case of Uchang Roshi and Sakiroshi's interpretation, is none of them are negated.
Yeah.
Because all three are in our life, in ourselves. But try to be free from attachment or clinging. But still, in my case, I attach my Zazen practice.
So the delusion entailed in number 1 involves the clinging to ideas and not the ideas themselves. Nor is it the case that ideas in and of themselves are delusional. The delusion is clinging to the ideas as being something other than what they really are.
I think so.
Yeah, I think the imagined nature is specifically mistaking something for, something that it's not. So from the perspective of the perfected nature, you could see, how a normal person might mistake it for something that it's not, but you would know that, yes, a normal person, I guess you would know that it would be a mistake to perceive it that way.
Of course, they make distinction between completely fabricate, completely illusion, and illusion that has even a little bit connection with reality. Like, fantasy is completely delusion or illusion, nothing to do with what is happening in front of us. But there are some idea about that things happening in front of me. Like this is a book and this is a case of eyeglass. It's not so mistaken. As a thinking, these are correct. But to see this a book is, according to Etakisho, is already a fabrication. This is a book, and this is a valuable book to me as a Buddhist. But for people who are not interested in Buddhism, this is really worthless. And for example, for some insect, this is a collection of food. There are some insects who eat paper. So to see this as a Buddhist book, therefore this is important to me because I want to study Buddhism. But for other people or other living beings, to think this is an important book is a fabrication within a Buddhist person. So, but within human world, to think this is a book is not a complete mistake. Does it make sense? So even even those fabrications, there's a complete fabrication, nothing to do with the reality, and there are some fabrication that has some meaning within our life. Please.
Yeah, so when we hold these views simultaneously, that it's empty, but then the relative truth of it being a book, and we need to use we need to use discriminating wisdom in our life because we have to interact with the world. So what is the best way to utilize that without forming attachments? Because we could live in this one world where it's just emptiness, but that's not the world we live in. So how do we hold this in mind and hold this in mind without forming attachment to this?
That is what is called middle way. There's no fixed middle way. So in each moment and each situation, we have to find the middle way. How can we become free from two sides and find the best things I can do within this situation? So there's no such fixed way or fixed method. We can become always free from two ways. So that is why Dogen said our practice, our enlightenment is beginningless, but our practice is endless. So each moment we have to awake. Our condition inside of ourselves and condition outside of ourselves, and what is the best thing I can offer, I can do. Does this make sense?
Yeah. Do you think it naturally arises in the moment with the right thing?
Sometimes naturally arise, sometimes I have to think. And in order to think, I have to be free from my ready-made idea. That is a very important part of our practice to become even a little bit flexible than, when I was young, I had a very solid discrimination, even among Buddhist teachings. Dogen's teaching and just sitting is the best thing. Nothing else can be the same. So other tradition or other teaching or other practice is false or inferior. That was inferior, I think. That is really fabrication. Okay, thank you very much. This is the final Sunday of 2018.
No more this year.
So from next week we have new year, and I think Dojo is going to give a talk next Sunday. Thank you.
Maybe.
Okay.
Rinzai